Owen Murphy, Deputy 10 minutes.
Mr. McCarthy, I just want to pick up where Deputy Doherty left off, if I may, and that's the letter from the regulator from the 12th of March 2008, and the reference document is UBI B2, page 24. It took 3 months to reply to the concerns that Deputy Doherty already examined with you. Would that be an average length of reply, or is there a delay then?
Well, it was definitely too long, Deputy, so I accept that. The principal reason for the delay would have been, as I explained earlier, the nature of the engagement, which would have been to come into the institution, to do the work, and then leave, and then send us the letter. And thus there would have been a significant amount of work to be done to get all the papers back together again, to look at them, to make sure that all the answers were ready. So that would have taken an amount of time. As to whether the length of time here was appropriate or not, on the face of it, it seems to be lengthy. But I can understand the amount of time it takes to do these things properly, because we took our responsibilities seriously in this regard.
I think you said earlier that matters could have been dealt with during the review with the regulator.
Correct, I believe so, yes.
But if you could just help me then with on page 24 in the letter from the regulator, the first bullet, it says, following a request by the inspection team to meet with the relationship managers at the bank, at Ulster Bank, our inspection team was advised by senior management that this may not be appropriate. In this regard, I would be obliged to advise all staff of their obligations under Section 17A3E of the Central Bank Act 1971 as amended. Can you explain that bullet to me?
Yes, it's not. I can give you what the answer was in the letter we responded, and that we did explain. And the answer is that we noted their comments and confirmed that all staff are aware of their obligations. That's not satisfactory. There is no reason why I would want restricted access to be given to anybody in the institution. So at the time, if the regulator had raised an issue with me or my senior staff about access to people, I would have dealt with it at the time. So,
but is that not a case of the regulator trying to meet with senior staff and them refusing to meet with the regulator?
That would have been people who were further down in the organisation. So this would have been about meeting relationship managers who handled client relations. It was not about meeting people further up the organisation. So what the letter seems to be saying is that the Central Bank inspection team, or the regulatory inspection team, had asked to meet relationship managers who dealt individually with clients, and for whatever reason that was denied.
But I mean, the regulator wouldn't be contacting them directly. They'd be going through their managers,
of course.
Senior staff.
I would suspect so, yes.
So would that mean the senior staff were then denying the opportunity for the regulator to meet with those relationship managers?
Unfortunately, Deputy, I don't know. All I can say is that I would never have had a problem with the regulator speaking to relationship managers. And on foot of the letter, we went back to the regulator and, as requested, said to them that we had explained to our people what their responsibilities were in this regard. But if the regulator had come to me or to my senior executives at the time and raised this issue, I believe that there would not have been a problem. So I don't understand how the matter arose. If it had been brought up at the time, I believe it would have been dealt with appropriately in allowing access, and subsequently we responded to the regulator to say that yes, we were conscious of our obligations and had told our people what they were.
Okay. Well, if we take then the instance of the interaction, the exchange of letters over this inspection process by the financial regulator, and some of the comments that you've made in terms of your interaction with them being periodic or there being no regular dialogue, could you characterise then your bank's relationship with the regulator in that period when you were CEO, 2004 to well up to 2008?
As I've said earlier, it was respectful and appropriate. We respected the regulator. We regarded our obligations as being, as being serious. We sought to behave and observe all the appropriate protocols. We took inspections seriously. The relationship was characterised, I think we've submitted something like 300 pieces of correspondence for the relevant period to the inquiry, so there was a fair degree of interaction. But typically it was situational and thematic. There was little enough kind of broad-based discussion. I would have met the chairman of the governor of the central bank and the chief executive of the regulator probably annually for a general discussion. But typically the engagement was around situational matters, inspections, industry thematic things. 60 to 70% of the engagement was around consumer matters, not prudential matters. So typically what you're seeing in the flow of documents would have been not unusual, in that there would have been an inspection, a review, a thematic issue came up, a customer issue or a fee issue or something like that. So a lot of the dialogue and engagement was to that end.
And would you ever discuss the financial regulator or your relationship with the financial regulator with your parent bank, with OBS? Would that
Yes, indeed, and our parent bank would have met with the regulator when they visited. So, for example, the head of regulatory risk or the regulatory risk in Royal Bank of Scotland would have met with the regulator. Senior management from Royal Bank of Scotland would have, as a matter of courtesy, if they were visiting Dublin, would have met the regulator, say, on an annual basis. So the chief executive of Royal Bank of Scotland Group would have met the governor of the central bank or the chief executive of the regulator on, say, an annual basis when visiting Dublin.
And would letters like these have been brought to their attention?
To the attention of
RBS?
I can't recall that the process would have been the group policy committees that RBS members sat on would have had sight of these. There were independent directors on our boards, so it was agreed that they would have oversight, and in some cases the ultimate board of Ulster Bank Limited would have regulatory conversations and issues brought to it, and there were Royal Bank of Scotland members on that. So, but to the extent a detailed matter like this would have been escalated right up to the top of RBS, I'm not sure, Deputy.
And when you talk about receiving a non-objection, you introduce a new product into the market or a new policy as a non-objection. Is that the same as approval?
Yes, I suppose so, Deputy. In that if the regulator had said to us, don't do this, and had brought their, as has been seen subsequently, that brought themselves to bear on us, we were respectful enough. Now, in fairness, we would have had a discussion about it, but ultimately, if the regulator told us not to do something, we wouldn't have done it. For example, the 250% limit, we did not breach that limit. So we were conscious of our obligations and respectful of the regulator. So, non-objection is tacit agreement, but if the regulator told us not to do something, we wouldn't have done it.
And what about being proactive in your approach to the regulator, ever going to them prior to September 2008 with a concern, say, over a particular product or, for example, an accounting standard, IAS 39?
On the latter point, Deputy, the accounting standards were the accounting standards. They were a given and they were accepted. I mean, there was a huge amount of work went into it. We would have had a lot of engagement with the regulator over stress testing. So on a macroprudential side of things, there was regular stress testing which was done. And so that would have been quite an important series of engagement. When Basel II and ICAP came in, we would have had a lot of engagement with the regulator in that regard. And in terms of products, as I said, we would have notified the regulator of the introduction of the 100% mortgage. But that was the general flow of things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.